Now we are about to watch something which is quite different and also very special, very close to my heart, and I think many of yours, because this is a hearing about a close Mandalorian family member, Cajun Overcomer, aka Brandy. This is about a parole hearing that took place in 2019 before they were broadcasting the parole hearings on YouTube. So we're going to listen to an audio version only of it. Please, if you can, pay attention to this hearing. Although we can't see what's going on, we can feel what's going on, we can hear what's going on, and we can listen to Brandy stand up to what's going on, to all the brokenness and disturbing, disgusting nature of this hearing. Let's jump in.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Duquette, would you please state your full name and your Department of Corrections ID?
Todd Michael Duquette, 336250.
Thank you, Mr. Duquette. My name is Alvin Roche, and I will serve as chairman today. To my left is Ms. Cheryl Renaza. To my right is Ms. Pearl Wise. Let me explain the process to you. I will read some information into the record. Afterwards, we will conduct a parole interview with you. At the appropriate time, one Vinoy will give remarks. If you have any family members, we'll give family members a chance to make a statement on your behalf.
Yes, sir.
At the very end, before we vote, we will allow you to make a statement on your behalf. If there's any victim opposition at headquarters or here at Southern University's Law Center, we'll give them a chance to make a statement. Do you understand the process?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Duquette, you are a second felony offender. Your offenses are indecent behavior with a juvenile, 4 counts, oral sexual battery, 1 count. You were sentenced on July 24th, 1994. You were revoked on July 2nd, 2008. Your sentence was 5 years at hard labor, each count of the indecent behavior, and 10 years for the oral sexual battery. You have a total sentence of 30 years. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Your parole date matter of fact, your parole date is March 25th, 2018. Your good time date, March 28th, 2021. And your full term date, March 23rd, 2037. Is this information correct?
I believe so, sir.
We have opposition at the hearing. Would the opposition please stand? Would you please give your full name and your relationship to this offender? Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. At the appropriate time, we'll give you a chance to make a statement.
You've been incarcerated, 11 years, with only 2 write-ups. So I want to commend you on a good conduct record. You've had a recent mental health evaluation, which indicates your mental status is within normal limits. So, considering some of the info that we've talked about, I want you to tell us why you believe you should be afforded early release.
I wish to say this, first of all, as far as my participation in faith-based, I'm a strict church member of Full Gospel. I'm one of the prayer warriors, very involved in the prayer team and the revivals they've been having around here, very much involved in ministry, and have been for, pretty much back there at Camp C and since I've been up at the main prison. But as far as why should you give me early release? Well, I don't come as if it's a right. I understand it here after 21 years of incarceration. I understand privileges, not rights, privileges. And it would be a blessing to get out there. It would be a blessing to apply what I've learned in here. It would be a blessing to help more people. It would be great to be a productive citizen. It would be great to have another chance at society. It would be great to get a chance to make up for my past crimes. I can't blame anybody but myself. I take full responsibility, have from the get-go, and I'm a changed man. As far as merit, I have conduct, I have behavior, I have heart, I have character references, but I'm simply humbly asking for mercy, because that's what it boils down to, is mercy.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, we do in the record have opposition that's been expressed. There's opposition. The sentencing judge will hear from the district attorney's office shortly. The chief of police in Baton Rouge also has expressed opposition. During the investigative process, we were unable to locate victims, but I'm anxious to hear from the district attorney's representative in that regard. We also do a risk assessment score, and your risk assessment score on the Tiger, which is a new tool we're using to assess risk, you rate moderate. You're a moderate risk to reoffend. We also do a static 99 risk assessment for sex offenders, adult male sex offenders. And in that category, it's concerning because you rate in the moderate to high category to reoffend. And you were 1 point away from being a high risk. So that is concerning to me. I don't have any other questions of you, Mr. Duquette.
Ms. Wise?
Mr. Duquette, do you have any supervision on your Texas charge? Did you full term on that charge?
On the Texas charge, I full termed in prison.
All right, thank you. That's all.
I was on detainer here.
Sir? Go ahead.
I'm sorry? I was on detainer from Louisiana while all the time I was there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But I was in prison.
Okay, so you have no supervision outstanding in Texas as parole or anything?
I went through the Teen Challenge. I went through the Teen Challenge program and graduated. And I went to the sheriff's office. He sent me to the city police, and they sent me to the lady that works with sex offenders. She contacted Miss Murphy, and then Miss Murphy told me to get with her. I did. And she said she couldn't do anything until she heard from Miss Murphy. And that was the end of that. I just lived in an apartment, got out, lived in an apartment.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you. That's all I had, Jim.
Let's hear from the victim side. Brandy, would you like to come up and make a statement? Brandy? Address all your remarks to the Committee on Parole and not to Mr. Duquette.
Good morning. My name is Brandy. My family and I are victims of this inmate. and we strongly oppose him being granted parole. In 1993, he was charged with 49 counts of sexual acts with children, and these victims were all between the ages of 8 and 12. He was charged with indecent behavior with juveniles, oral sexual battery, aggravated crimes against nature, and sexual battery. Under a plea agreement, however, he was able to plead guilty to only 5 of those crimes. He was sentenced to a total of 30 years in prison, but then that sentence was suspended and he was placed on active supervised probation with conditions. Less than 4 months later, the inmate violated those terms of his probation and his sentence was imposed. Although he was convicted of 5 crimes, there are many other victims. My family is among those other victims. In the spring of 1990, he anally raped my brother Josh, who is pictured right here, and my oldest brother Wayne. And he also did them by oral sexual battery. At the time, my brothers were 9 and 11 years old. My family was a fairly normal family, but after my brothers were raped, we were devastated. And even though these crimes happened in 1990, my family is still suffering. After he was raped, my brother Josh developed mental and emotional problems that grew and grew. And when he was in the 5th grade, he tried to kill himself. Wayne also developed mental and emotional problems, and after he was raped, and his way of dealing with it was to act out. Unfortunately, his way of acting out involved raping me. I was 6 years old. And he continued to rape me almost every night until I was 10. It should not be surprising to learn that I still have problems from all of this. In my entire life, I have never known what it is like to feel normal. I know that I now have a completely twisted view of males, and my trust in people has been ruined. My desires and abilities to have a boyfriend relationship were destroyed before they could ever develop. If this inmate would have just stayed away from my family, I think I would have had a chance at a more normal life, even after watching my mom survive a domestic violence attempted murder, which is why we came to Baton Rouge. But that chance was stolen from me. Another victim of this inmate is my mother, who had to endure the trauma of her 2 sons being raped and all the problems that it caused. That's my mom right there. What this inmate did completely traumatized my entire family and changed all of our lives forever. My mother would be here today, but she passed away. So on behalf of myself, my mom, my brothers Wayne and Josh, as well as his other victims, I ask that you not grant parole to this inmate. His victims continue to suffer, and he should have to serve the full sentence that he was given. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy.
And this man has demonstrated by his actions, because he was given the keys to the prison by Judge Irwin. Judge Irwin gave him the keys to the prison. He chose by his own actions when he violated and sexually abused a 10-year-old child in Texas. He chose to open up the jail cell. And while he said to you that he served 21 years, 10 of those years for his crime in Texas, He has served 11 years for this crime. He is in no way, shape, or form served the full sentence.
At this time, Mr. Duquette, would you like to make a closing statement?
The statement is totally false. I didn't do those things to them. I didn't do those things.
Thank you, Mr. Duquette. Is the panel ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Renaza?
Mr. Duquette, I'm really concerned by what you just said. However, let me just say this. I want to commend you on your ministry work that you do and are doing and have done in the faith-based community there at Angola. I want to commend you on your educational accomplishments. However, today, because of what we've heard here today, the risk assessment that has been conducted that puts you above the low category in the moderate to high risk, my vote today is to deny your parole.
Ms. Wise?
Mr. Duquette, my vote is denied for the reasons already been stated. Additionally, you have law enforcement opposition, strong victim opposition, and you have a history of sex offenses.
Mr. Duquette, you have received 2 votes to deny your request for early release. I must agree with my colleagues this morning, and my reasoning is for the same reasons mentioned by my colleagues. You have received 3 votes to deny your request. Your request for early release has been denied. You have a good day.
A convicted pedophile won't be getting out of prison anytime soon after a parole board heard emotional pleas by the victim's family. The investigative unit highlighted the case earlier this week. News 2's Brandy B. Harris was at the hearing today, and it had a surprise outburst by the convict. Brandy?
That's right, Chris. The room was totally stunned when Todd Michael Duquette responded to the victim's statements, saying it was all, quote, totally false. Duquette was originally convicted of preying on 5 young boys. Tonight, while he's still in denial, a family is relieved he's still in prison.
I knew I had to do this because if he would have been granted, we'd be having future victims and having this conversation again.
Brandy Melissa stood up at a parole hearing to make sure convicted pedophile Todd Michael Duquette remains in prison for molesting children between the ages of 8 and 12 back in the 90s, including her 2 brothers.
I knew I had the courage to do it, but because his other victims couldn't be here.
After his original 30-year sentence was suspended, he moved to Texas, where he was picked up again in 1998, this time with a 10-year-old. His parole was revoked and he was brought back to Louisiana to complete his original sentence. His victims didn't even know he had a chance to get out, but the district attorney's office has been reaching out and giving them an opportunity to be heard.
But they, of course, were passionate about wanting their voices heard and this man not being able to harm any more children.
And Duquette responded to his victims and their statements during the hearing by saying it was all, quote, totally false.
This man has, since the case occurred and ever since, blamed children for his predatory acts upon them.
For him, 29 years later, to be able to pronounce my name as clearly as he did and make a reference to point out me out of everything that was said, that proves his guilt.
Now, Duquette was unanimously denied parole. His full sentence won't be complete until 2037, but the Department of Corrections says Duquette is expected to be released in just 2 years due to good time. Chris?
I'm left with a real powerful mix of emotions. It's on one hand, I'm just so proud to see Brandy, Cajun Overcomer, who I feel like we've all gotten to know in the chat and in emails, and we always please go give her YouTube channel a subscribe. She's done so much in Louisiana on behalf of victims, survivors, and now to hear this and see her in action, it just gives me such a high level of respect. It's very different seeing and hearing someone who I feel like I've come to know stand up there and just fight for what's right. And then the other emotions that I have are just how sick and twisted the system is, and we knew that already. Can you imagine that a judge let him plead guilty to 4 counts and then gave him a suspended sentence? He gave him a suspended sentence, 30 years with a suspended sentence. Are you kidding me? You just can't make this stuff up. A judge like that, in my opinion, has to be investigated because there is no logical argument that one can make that would justify a suspended sentence. And guess what happens? A real shocker. He goes to Texas and then is caught with a 10-year-old. Are you freaking kidding me? The judge should be sitting in the cell with him. And if the DA agreed to that deal, I don't know. Should be sitting there too. It is sick. It's just sick. And this is part of why we do this. Because anyone with just a little bit of common sense would say, of course you don't give a suspended sentence. But when we find out about this, you say, no, it can't be true. It can't be true. I miss you're it's not possible. And everyone I tell this to who are just I've never heard of this, my YouTube channel, never seen this, and you tell them these things, they don't believe you. They say no, it's not. Then why? And really, it took someone, a survivor like Brandy, to stand up there and fight. And this story, it's just starting. This is not what we're going to go over. Some more information. The idea that he's supposed to have a 30-year sentence, which he then got suspended, and then he was not supposed to get out until 2037. But because of his good time tape, he'd be getting out in just 2 years from the time of this hearing, if you can believe that, right? But let's go see what happened as to why he didn't get out. It's going to see additional blatant corruption on Louisiana's side, albeit corruption on the good side of the law, but not the first time we've seen corruption. We've seen many times, but let's just jump into it.
A sudden change. A sex offender will not be getting out of prison after we started to ask questions about his release.
The man is serving a 30-year sentence for molesting multiple boys in Baton Rouge. And now the investigative unit and Chris Nakamoto with why his release has been blocked.
Sylvia, Michael, Todd Michael Duquette received good time while in prison for molesting young boys. He met the legal requirements to get out in just a few hours from now. But when we started asking questions, the state crawfished on his release, saying the residence plan they approved is no longer valid. This is a face of a child predator who until Monday afternoon met the requirements to be released back into society. Todd Michael Duquette raped Brandy Melissa's relatives.
My 2 brothers.
It came to light while they were at school.
11 days before Christmas, the year it happened, one of my brothers attempted suicide during recess at school. When they asked him why, explained what happened. My other brother coped by molesting me.
In 1994, Duquette was convicted, stemming from sex acts he performed on 5 boys between the ages of 8 and 12. He was charged with 49 counts, but pled guilty to 4 of them. A judge suspended his sentence, and Duquette moved to Texas. That's where this mugshot comes in. He got caught with a 10-year-old over there and was sentenced to prison in Texas. He'd later be sent back to Louisiana to fulfill his original 30-year conviction here. Melissa doesn't think Duquette can be rehabilitated.
I'm terrified because you can't rehabilitate people like that.
Her sentiments are echoed by respected LSU criminologist Ed Shahada. When Duquette went before the parole board in 2019, they denied his parole. Shahada made it clear at the time it's very hard to rehabilitate certain predators.
You can't change your sexuality. No prison course is going to change your sexual preferences. It's something that is a unique personality disposition that tends to reassert itself throughout your life.
This letter states Duquette was scheduled to be released Wednesday and will remain under state supervision until 2038. Search of that address shows it appears to be a property that houses sex offenders. But 4 hours after we began asking questions Monday morning, the state issued this 4-sentence statement saying Duquette will not be released Wednesday. Tonight, Melissa believes prison is the only place for Duquette to keep the public safe.
I don't want another child getting hurt. But with them not keeping him where he should be till his completion, I can't say that that's not going to happen. And nobody can guarantee me that that's not going to happen.
Duquette's 30-year sentence in Louisiana didn't start until after he completed his time in Texas in 2008. The Department of Corrections says the landlord at the facility in Lacombe withdrew the housing plan. And until Duquette comes up with another one, he'll remain locked up.
So, can you believe it? On Good Time. And, well, thank goodness, right? You have the news agency reach out, and I don't doubt for a second that our Brandy had something to do with that. Fighting to keep this monster, this cockroach, locked up. And when I was talking about the corruption, it's all of a sudden the man who's supposed to house them says, "Oh, I turned down your housing." I mean, what do you think? How do you think that happened? What kind of backroom conversations happen when all of a sudden the Louisiana DOC said, "Oh my gosh, the news is finding out that we're letting this monster out for good time. For good time. We're letting him out at this point, what, 17 years early? Are you kidding me? A serial child offender who already got a probated sentence only to be caught again? And he gets good time? That's just the legislation, right? That was running at the time in Louisiana. People who write those into laws, they should all be investigated because it makes no sense. Anyone with common sense says it makes no sense. Anyone who has, I don't know, just some bit of humanity would say it makes no sense. But who would actually write stuff like that into law? That someone who does that to children, a repeat offender who gets a 30-year sentence after getting revoked because they repeated the offense, could then get out 17 years early because of good time? Good time while he's in protective custody? Who cares? They're so clueless with their own system. They don't even realize that all of these roaches, all of these monsters, all have perfect records in prison. We have seen maybe 2 that have not had perfect records, but they're pretty darn close to it. They're like lizard humanoids. They just do. Or it's because they're in protective custody. I'm not sure. Maybe a mixture of both. it was at least nice to see the professor here talk some sense, not the fancy algorithm PhDs that tell us who is a high risk and a low risk. Talking about the low risk score, they had Miss Renatza bring it up. We just started using this. Remember that this hearing we just listened to was from 2019. We just started losing the risk score, and you're a moderate to reoffend. The first score, right? She had 2 scores. The first one was a moderate. There's low, moderate, and high. This guy doesn't even reach a high on those, according to those PhDs. If this guy doesn't reach a high, I wonder what possibly reaches a high. Ridiculous algorithm. It's as bad as YouTube's ridiculous algorithm. I'm sure of that. But all they did was kick the ball down the road, right? They only kicked the ball down the road because not such a long time later, this happened.
A Baton Rouge man convicted of molesting multiple boys in the 90s is now walking free, released 15 years before his sentence was supposed to be up. News 2's Bess Casterly spoke to the family of 2 of those victims. Bess, they say this Department of Corrections is making a mistake.
Yes, Sylvia, Todd Michael Duquette has proven at least once before that he cannot be changed, molesting another child during sex offender rehab before serving his 30-year sentence. But earlier this week, he was released for being a, quote, model prisoner.
Yeah, he was a model inmate in jail, but when he's in the free world, he's not.
Brittany Melissa is an indirect victim of Todd Michael Duquette. He was convicted of molesting at least 5 boys in East Baton Rouge Parish in 1994, including 2 of Melissa's brothers.
11 days before Christmas, the year it happened, one of my brothers attempted suicide during recess at school. When they asked him why, explained what happened. My other brother coped by molesting me.
We spoke to Melissa in this interview last year when Duquette was up for early release. However, the Department of Corrections denied that release when the landlord changed his mind about housing him once he was free. Melissa was relieved, but this week, all that changed.
Absolute terror.
Despite a law requiring that victims be notified of offenders' releases at least 60 days in advance, she received an email today saying Duquette was released the day before.
There's nothing that could have stopped them from keeping him to 2038. I don't know why they're taking the risk.
The Department of Corrections says they okayed his release because he served more than half his time and was eligible for good time parole according to Louisiana law. And this time around, he has a place to stay upon release. Melissa says she was advised by Duquette's parole officer that he will not be on an ankle monitor unless the parole board orders it.
Keep your kids completely away from him, and if you see him around the child, turn his ass in, because he's not walking around with being monitored.
The Department of Corrections says Duquette will be living at a place that houses sex offenders in New Orleans. He's also required to register as a sex offender with the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. In the newsroom, Bess Casterly, WBRZ News 2.
Thank you, Bess.
Yep. And this release happened on June 20th, 2023. And, it's strange looking at his registry. It says that his status, so status 1, 2, or 3, 3 being the strongest, has not even been determined yet. I don't know if that's just a typo or something, but yeah, can you imagine? And his level hasn't been assigned, and it's just, you can't make this stuff up. You really can't make this stuff up. And it brings a whole new kind of level when it's our Brandy, our Cajun Overcomer. And please, her YouTube channel link is in the description. She has a Buy Me a Coffee listed there. She does a lot of work in Louisiana. She's doing good stuff. So give her a sub. She's almost at 1,000. Been struggling to get to 1,000 subs. She's at about 850. So let's try to just get her over the hump to 1,000, to the big milestone marker. And I mean, how can you get released after serving 50% of your sentence for doing this? And like they said, when he was in his molestation program, child molestation program, when he did it to another child. It's like it's just the frustration. It's you just want to. I just want to scream. I just want to scream on good time, on good time. Now I know that we've seen many different hearings now where for certain crimes of sexual natures you're not allowed good time, and it's not clear to me if the legislation has changed and that's why, or if it's different types of certain offenses. It's really not clear. I think that it's that the legislation has changed, and so we can see that things are improving, and probably because of the awareness that's made from this stuff being on the news. And that's why we got to keep doing this and keep shouting on top of the rooftops, because there are people that simply are in charge of protecting our children that don't care about our children. And you only need to see this to know that and realize that and say, oh my gosh, our system is being run by a bunch of psychopaths. And so much respect to Brandy, Cajun Overcomer, for taking this fight, and you're not alone. We're here with you, Brandy. And thank you for sending this information so that we can share your story and broadcast your story. Of course, we're doing this entirely with Brandy's blessing. And thank you, Richard, for tying this all together. If you didn't see it, you probably wouldn't believe it. You did. And with that, I'll let you go.